Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dream City podcast. I'm Janae Dill. Tom Sherwood is out for a special episode that I'm going to be doing with Councilmember Doni Crawford, the newest council member on the DC Council. Just before the top, we get going. Spotlight DC is the sponsor of the Dream City podcast. Spotlight DC is the Capital City Fund for Investigative Journalism. They fund and award grants for award-winning, impactful accountability reporting. Visit spotlightdc.org to donate and view their projects. We have a special guest, Councilmember Doni Crawford. How you doing, Councilmember
Good morning,
Crawford?
Janae. Good morning, Janae. Thanks for having me today.
I almost called you Doni, but I'm going to call you Councilmember.
It's okay.
So I want to talk about, who you are, how you got to the DC Council, and why you're running, which in this election year, it's like an unusual election year. But first, I feel like let's start with the talk of the Wilson building. You've been on the council now for almost 4 weeks.
Yes.
And you're also a budget pro because you worked at the Wilson building and you worked at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, which is a think tank locally that knows the budget inside and out. There's a lot of talk about the Doge recession that people are worried about. The unemployment figures came in for December, up to 6.7% unemployment in DC. Is DC in a recession? Is that like a thing we can measure and say we're in a recession? What do you think?
I wouldn't say that we're in a recession yet. The CFO last year had warned that we could face a DC recession, so like a local recession, based on all the layoffs that were projected to happen when Doge first started. We did fare a little bit better than we expected over the last fiscal year. So our revenues at the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of September, actually came in a lot higher than I think most people had expected at the time, which meant back into September, that meant we would have been able to fund a set of priorities that the council decided to wait on to see if we had the revenue to fund that. Now with what we know just happened with the disapproval resolution, as well as where we're headed with the new February revenue forecast that is expected at the end of the month. Now we will see what lies ahead for the next fiscal year, but that's the state of affairs for now.
So the Congress bit is interesting. I haven't been able to follow it as closely just because I have to cover so many things. But
yes,
how, for an everyday person, how do we explain what Congress just did for the taxes of DC residents?
So let me take a step back before I talk about Congress. A few months ago, the council decided that they wanted to decouple from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So states across the country, I believe over 12 states, have decided, let's take a look at these tax provisions and decide whether or not we want to implement them in our local tax code. DC did the same. It wasn't a permanent decision because the council did it via emergency legislation, but we wanted to see which of the provisions we would want to put in place on a permanent basis. Therefore, the council, through this legislation, decided any provisions that would be a loss of $2 million or more per fiscal year, let's decide not to put these in place because it would have led to a $700 million hole in our budget over the next 4 years.
So the One Big Beautiful Bill changed the tax code. I guess it lowered taxes for some bands. It got rid of taxes on tips. And because of that, if DC also followed the same brackets for its local taxation, the city government would have less money to spend on programs and fund services.
Correct. That's exactly right. Unfortunately, Congress did not like that DC decided to decouple from those provisions, and both the House and Senate have now disapproved of that legislation, which means if the president signs it, I believe he has 10 days or so to sign it. If he signs it, then yet again, we're back in the same place where we started, where we have a $700 million hole to fill in our budget.
Yeah. Now, that's really bad if you're trying to fund programs, especially childcare subsidies are being contemplated for cuts now because of the budget crunch in the Wilson building. Uh, Everything from education to homelessness funding to all sorts of services the government provides. It's also a headache for DC taxpayers, I believe, because, now do you have to file your taxes again, and do you have to pay your
Mhm.
accountant again to file those revisions and
Yes.
all that? Um, I will just say, like, as a contrarian take, are there some residents might look at this and say, well, I was really hoping to not pay taxes on those tips, or I was hoping for those tax cuts to take an effect. Um, what do you make of that sort of maybe argument some person might have too?
So I would have 2 responses to that. First, when the council decoupled, we also as a body decided, "Hey, let's use some of the revenue to put in place a child tax credit and a higher match on the earned income tax credit." So we
Mm,
still were providing low and middle income families, with relief through the decoupling legislation. So that was already in place, prior to Congress's actions, right? But at the same time, I would also say, because we heard a lot from restaurant workers who were interested in that no tax on tips provision. And again, we weren't saying no to it. We just wanted to look at the long-term implications of putting it in place before before deciding whether to move forward with that particular provision on a permanent basis. So we provided immediate relief through child tax credit, earned income tax credit match. And then also we were going to take a look at no tax on tips, for example, to see in the future if that's something we wanted to provide in future tax years.
I see. So again, now to bring it all kind of together, the Doge cuts, the unemployment rate rising, this new thing that Congress did, which could leave DC with, I think, 700, $600 million less to spend in this upcoming budget year. The mayor just had a meeting with her cabinet and these DC council members, previewing what a tough budget cycle this will be. City Administrator Kevin Donahue said this is as difficult as any recession budget that he's worked on. Maybe we're not quite like in a recession literally, but
Mhm.
um, how tough does this budget look from your standpoint, and what are the painful trade-offs you think that the lawmakers and the mayor will have to make?
It'll be really tough. What I
Mm,
made clear is I'm hoping, because if your listeners don't know, the mayor gets the first opportunity to decide what cuts she wants to make, where she wants to spend. And what I made clear is I'm hoping that we do not limit cuts to just the health and human services sector. We should take a wide look at all of our clusters and then make tough choices if that's in fact what we'll have to do based on the February revenue forecast. I will say one of the things I think is that also impacts why we're in this situation is during the pandemic, the federal government provided states with millions of dollars in relief. And we always knew that it would be hard to keep up the revenue that was generated with that federal surplus, so to speak, in our budget. And so now we have arrived at a point where our revenues are not keeping up with our spending. So
mhm.
that means eventually we're going to have to figure out how we grow those revenues again and grow them in an inclusive way. But until we get to that point, again, I really want to make sure that we're responsible with our money, but also that we are not just cutting social services.
Yeah. And it's going to be tough because the health budget is 33%, I think, of the local budget.
It's
And so
pretty,
if
yeah.
you need to close what the mayor says is a $1.1 billion gap between current spending levels and the projected revenue estimates, uh, the person who leads that health cluster for the mayor, the cabinet official, Wayne Turnage, said, as bad as it sounds, it has to come through the health budget in some way, that cuts will have to be made in the health budget, they believe. It seems logical, but uh, you and other council
Mhm.
members will say, let's do our best to find other ways, but it does seem difficult.
Correct, correct. But I think it can be
Yeah.
done. The mayor has a really solid budget team who have been around for years. They know what they're doing. So, and then council will have the ability to take a look at that and make revisions as always if we don't agree with the choices that are made by the executive.
Okay, so this is gonna unfold in the coming months. When does the mayor's budget come out? I think May
It's
or
expected to be released on April 1st,
April
but
1st.
we'll
Okay.
see where we end up after the decoupling. We get through that and then the February revenue forecast.
Okay, maybe they should do April 2nd just to be, no
Yeah.
it's no
I
April
guess it is
Fool's
one,
budgets, please.
yeah, April Fool's Day.
Well, Mary Chey used to have this April Fool's budget she would do when she was Ward 3 council member.
I
She would
actually
come out
remember
with
that.
like a you remember that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think she would send it out council-wide.
Oh gosh. Okay, I wanna step back. I wanna hear the whole Donnie Crawford story. Um, as I mentioned, you worked on the DC Council. You were a staffer most recently leading the Business and Economic Development Committee, which Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie chaired before he
Mhm.
resigned to run for mayor, which set off a
Yes.
whole motion of things we can get into. You worked at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, but I want to get to know you more. What is the Donnie Crawford story?
Thanks for asking. So, I am a Ward 5 resident here in DC. I live in Carver, Langston. I am 36 years old.
Which is not far from the RFK Stadium redevelopment, I believe, right?
It's not. It's very close to there. It's close to the Arboretum. It's close to Langston Golf Course. So I really love my neighborhood. And I have been in DC for nearly a decade. I've spent two parts of my lives here. I came here originally when I was in grad school, and I lived in Columbia Heights. I love the district. I really wanted to stay. At the time, I was still
Where'd you go to
young.
grad school?
I went to the University of Pittsburgh, but we had a DC semester with the
Oh, okay,
University of
cool.
yeah, with the University of Colorado and Syracuse University, and I really wanted to stay, but, I was still young in my career, didn't have a ton of job experience, so I applied to, like, over 80 jobs, and I didn't get one interview at the time. So I had to go back home. I had student loans.
And where is
I'm
home
from
for you?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay,
Um
Pittsburgh is where.
yeah. So I went home, got some job experience. I spent 5 years at this organization called Neighborhood Allies, working in community. We worked with a national think tank named Policy Link. They were based in Oakland, California, and at the time, they were really trying to make sure that cities were looking to develop were developing equitably. And so I really
Mhm.
learned a lot about what equitable development looks like, making sure to center the people in cities who have been living there for a really long time in our policy making and our policy decisions. And after 5 years, I decided to start applying to DC jobs again. And fortunately, I got interviews this time, and I found the job at DC Fiscal Policy Institute as I originally started as a policy analyst focusing on affordable housing. And then I expanded my portfolio to include inclusive economy and cannabis issues. And
Mhm.
that's how I got to know the council. I testified before council numerous times, got to know council members, their staff. I wrote really compelling research. I love to read, I love to write. And so I did all that in partnership with community as well. We focused a lot at the time on Board 7 and 8. And that's what we wanted to amplify their voices. And so I spent a lot of time doing that work. And also, even though I like really enjoyed the policy work, we were an organization that focused on the budget. So every
Mhm.
year we did budget toolkits to basically explain to residents what happened with the budget deliberations between the executive and council. So that's where I got my experience learning how to read the budget books, learning about, operating versus capital budget, learning about debt, all those things, so that I could translate it for communities. I did a lot of budget trainings, and eventually I was ready to move on. I always had an inkling that I wanted to work at the council because
Mm.
as an advocate, you have to convince council members, hey, can you do XYZ? And I like the idea of being at council to have the power to do those things on our own, again, in partnership with community. So after about 4 years, I joined the council March 2022. And that's when I worked with Councilmember McDuffie. I served a variety of roles for him: senior advisor, legislative director, and committee director. Ultimately, like you said, for the Committee on Business and Economic Development.
And
That's
before
me.
you became a budget wonk, which I use positively, I went to American University, and their whole tagline is everyone should be a wonk. So um,
Okay.
I'm from. But did you grow up wanting to be an elected official, or were your parents like, you should really go into XYZ profession, or
No, I did not. It's kind of funny. The family business was education. So
okay?
most of my most of my cousins, my family members, my aunts, like everyone is either a teacher, a principal, a school administrator. They love education work. And like a lot of
Mm,
people who maybe grew up in a family business where when you're younger, I feel like you resist it a little bit. Like, I don't want to go into
mm-hmm.
education. I want to do something else.
Sure.
Uh, I never thought I'd be an elected official or appointed official. I thought that I would just spend my time honestly, early on, I wanted to do US Latin American affairs. So I was really
Mm,
interested in like foreign policy.
mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until I went back home and worked for a community development organization that I even started thinking about local government. And now I can't see myself doing anything else at this point because I love it so much.
I see. Wow. I mean, you actually mentioned a good point. An appointed official, um,
Mhm.
your path to the DC Council was rare, I think unprecedented. There was a
It
vacancy
was.
where your boss, Council member Kenyon McDuffie, resigned to
Yeah.
run for mayor in early January. I think there have been appointments before. Usually, they're from the Democratic Party. In this case, it was an independent seat, and so the
Correct.
DC Council itself chose the next member. There were like 40 odd names. People thought the process was actually unfair and closed off. Some people did at least,
Mhm.
but in the end, it was a unanimous vote to pick you, and even people who were critical of the process, like Janice Lewis George, praised you and said you can't think of a better person for the job. Kind of. Um, how did that process begin for you?
Sure. It was unprecedented. I knew like I had read the Home Rule Act before, and I knew that the council would appoint in the case that an independent member of the council resigned and vacated their seat. And similar to all you, I started hearing about this, around the fall. And so I did change my party to independent, just so I could be eligible. And I had
Mm,
one conversation with my former boss just to get his blessing to talk to his colleagues. And then the
mm,
process in December kind of unfolded in it was really interesting experience because I felt like I interviewed with 12 members of the council, and some of them I had conversations like 2, 3 times, so it was intense.
So
I
you're
likened it
sitting in
to
the office of like some council member and talking about this, like kind of like a job interview or their vote
uh,
interview.
yeah, it was a combination of, outside the building, inside the building, phone calls because this was all over the holiday break, so some people weren't in town and, it was a mix of, venue formats, but yes, I likened it to me whipping votes for myself. So I was used to whipping
Hmm.
votes for bills, but now I had to convince, all of my current colleagues now, that I would be the best person for the job. So it was intense. It unfolded over several weeks, and I'm not gonna go into, like, our private conversations, but,
Hmm.
ultimately, yes, they did select me as, the person to be appointed to the seat.
Did you I mean, everyone, in any line of work is like, "What's my boss gonna do? Are they gonna leave? Do I need to look for another job?" kind of situation. Did you read the writing
Oh,
on the
yeah.
wall that, your boss is gonna run for office, maybe higher office, and did you think you wanted to run for that seat originally? Had you made up your mind
No,
early on that you wanted to be a council member?
no, no, definitely not. I'm
Mm.
one of those, staffers that really enjoys the work. I love
Mhm.
writing committee reports. Tom actually joked with me when I was on Kojo. He was like, "You can't do that anymore." But I love, like, writing reports. I love drafting the bills, coming up with a final bill product. And when I could kinda see the writing on the wall, I didn't want that to end for me. And I do wanna give a special shout out to Chairman Phil Mendelson because typically when council members vacate their seats or if there's a resignation for some other reason or there's an open seat on the council, the chairman does not have to keep staff on, but he has done a really good job of
Mm,
like allaying the concerns and anxieties of staff when that happens, because our whole office was of course very nervous about would we keep our jobs, would we have to find new employment immediately, and he did let us know early on that we would be able to stay with him for some months. So that was helpful as far as like the unknown. And he didn't have to do that. So I want to thank him for that.
mhm. What is Chairman Mendelson like, uh, behind the scenes?
I feel like he's like you see him in front of cameras. He has personality, he's funny. He is
I
also
would
a
not
former
say that
staff.
at all about I would not describe Councilman I have no idea who you're talking
Wait,
about.
you don't think he's funny in the press conferences? He has like that
Yeah,
dry
he has a
humor that makes
no,
you laugh.
I'm joking. He has a dry humor.
But
Never
he's
heard of him.
easy to talk to, and I think he's very smart. He's a former staffer, so he gets on the
Mhm,
weeds. You could see that day to day too, on bills,
mhm,
on strategy, just on all things council. One of the things I always say that impresses me the most about him is he reads everything still. So like he knows what's going
mhm,
on with, it seems like, every bill, every issue, and even in the work, like, with his staff, he's still redlining and writing, "Here's how
mhm.
I want it to read," and so, I like that he still gets in the weeds on everything. I don't know if, like,
He does,
other
yeah.
people I do.
I think he ran one year on the slogan that he's a nitpicker in a positive way. He really owned the fact that he was a nitpicker and he knows the process better than anyone else. He's also a
Mhm.
very, very powerful chairman, and he had a lot of power in this appointment process as well. I mean, we hear about the arm twisting and the horse trading. How much of that
Mhm.
have you seen working at the Wilson Building? Is he twisting
I
arms?
have I don't know, like, this process, how it unfolded, because I only had my individual conversations. I wasn't in, like, a group conversation with the council. I know there was criticism on the process, but, um, the council, of course, knew that the Home Rule Act says the council appoints, so I think they did do it. I believe they, all had the opportunity to speak with the chairman to say what they wanted in the next person, and so, um, that's all I can say about that.
Um, what are what are the top couple issues that really animate you, that get you passionate about, um, now
Mhm.
and also previously? Obviously, you've been doing work at the council for a long time.
I would definitely say affordable housing. Affordability is like the word of the year or the past year.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm thinking about it from the perspective of both renters, tenants, because as I mentioned, I've been a tenant for over 10 years, and
Mm, mhm,
eventually I want to own a home one day. So I'm looking at both sides where what can we do to make sure people like me and like our generation have the opportunity to buy in DC. I also heard from residents, older Black residents, when I was helping, them with their snow, that they were landlords, and they want me to also have a perspective of what it means to be a small landlord that may have purchased a home with the intention of using that income to help pay for tuition for their grandkids. And what does it mean for them to be able to keep that income going and generate wealth, right? When we talk about the economy, I also, because I mentioned there's going to be a focus in making sure we grow our revenues, I want to make sure that we do that in an inclusive way. So I'm always saying inclusive growth or inclusive economy, because we know just what we hear from longtime DC residents about Chocolate City and how it may not look as chocolate as it used to.
mhm.
Like, I still want to be a voice for Black residents to make sure that they're a part of solutions when we figure out how we're going to grow in the future. And then education is one that I'm interested in as well. I think every family and their children should have access to quality schools no matter their neighborhood, and so that's something I'll also be focused on.
Speaking of education and Chairman Mendelson, Mendelson does not think the DC Council should have an education committee. I've pointed out that every state legislature has a standalone education committee just dedicated to public schools and whatever. He disagrees. He has it under his main committee, which is the Committee of the Whole. Do you think there should be an education committee? I mean, we've had one in the past.
So I will say that I know the education committee staff and they do an excellent job. And I think they do great work. I do, however, believe there should be a standalone education committee.
A standalone, yeah. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And we used to have that. So
that's right. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
mhm.
Before we move on, quick note from our sponsor, Spotlight DC supports local investigative journalism. Go to spotlightdc.org. Um, so you've been in office for 3, 4 weeks about, and you've decided to run for the seat that you hold in the upcoming June 16th. Or I'm sorry, actually, this is
It is
confusing
June 16th.
live as I'm doing
Yeah.
this, but the election is June 16th, right?
Yes, it
But
is. It's just
it's not the Democratic primary because it's an independent seat. It's gonna be a special election on that June 16th election ballot.
yeah,
And you'll
correct.
be running against other candidates running as, in that race. You waited
Hmm.
some time to announce that you would be running. Why'd you wait, and what did you learn?
I felt like I didn't have a lot of time to make a decision. So even though people saw it as waiting a long time, I was appointed on
Mm,
January 20th. At that point, I was not, I didn't have a decision in mind. I was focused on getting the appointment for weeks, right? So then we get to January 20th, I get appointed. And then at that point, I have no staff. So I have to make sure that I
mm.
spend the first week making sure I have a staff in place to support residents, to let them know we're accessible. I also was highly cognizant of just not being elected. So I wanted to spend time getting to be in conversations with communities. So I called all the ANC chairs across all 8 wards to introduce myself, to let them know once I had a team that we had a team in place, and to ask them what they were thinking about as far as issues that were of concern to them, but also the new budget and if they had any budget priorities. I had office hours in Ward 7, 8, 1, and 2. I will do the rest of the other 4 wards in the coming weeks, this week, next week. And then I also did several ANC meetings with like 8A and a meet and greet with Ward 7. So I was really just making sure I was focused on doing the job. And throughout that, first week too, I knew I was leaning toward running because even when I got in the seat and I got to like, start to be at hearings, ask questions to agencies, um, have my first ledge meeting and like go through the emergencies, review all the things. It was really fun. And to be honest with you, there's a part of me that doesn't want to give that up. And I think that I work very well in partnership with community and I have something to contribute on their behalf. And that's why I'm running in this special.
One of the, issues that a lot of residents got riled up about was the snow response. It was kind of a, a it became part of a larger theme of, is the government running efficiently? Are government services in need of auditing or more attention being paid to bread and butter issues? The council has a big oversight role. That's one of the big jobs of the
Mhm.
council. Do you think the council has held the Bowser administration to account sufficiently over the past several years? And what would you do to change that if not?
So one of the things that I thought throughout this process is to level set. So we all knew the storm was coming and that it was going to be particularly different than past storms. What surprised me is when basically after it finished snowing and that turned I think there was rain that then turned it to ice, right? I didn't realize
Yeah,
that
there's a
the
lot of
equipment that
ice.
we
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't realize that the equipment that we had in place was not sufficient to cut through ice, right? And I think part of that has to do with here in DC, unlike back home in Pittsburgh, we don't face the kind of storms that I guess other states do. And so in our oversight as council, I know there's a number of us just as council members who have said we would be willing to invest in tough, like heavier machinery that can cut through ice, even if it's not used every winter, right? Because it
Mm,
was very clear that we didn't have access to the machinery that we needed to get this ice slash snowcrete, that's what it's called, snowcrete up. And I think if we had access, we would have seen a swifter response. And so my position now is I believe it's worth it. I haven't seen all the numbers, but I believe it's worth it to invest in the heavier machinery as opposed to having to subcontract in the moment, right? To be able to get snow up. And then one of the things that I still need to go back and look through just the legislative history around why we don't plow alleys. I've heard from residents, I've heard from members of the council that are interested in changing that law around the district not being responsible for alleys. And so the DPW hearing, the oversight hearing was last week with public witnesses. We will have the opportunity to also ask questions of the government witnesses coming up. It's either this week or next week. And that's something that I will add my voice to and want to see going forward.
yeah, because accountability does matter, not on just this issue, the snow took everyone blindsided, whatever, but
Yeah,
all sorts of issues like spending when it comes to taxpayer money efficiently across all kinds of programs. Because I think everyone can agree, I think programs should be benefiting the people that they're aimed to benefit. Before we
absolutely.
go, one big political question. We have a big mayor's race. Your boss is running for mayor. Councilmember Janice Lewis George, your colleague now, is running for mayor, and several other people. Are you going to pick sides in the mayor's race? Do you plan to endorse someone
I have
before the Democratic
I haven't
primary?
made yeah, I haven't made a decision on that yet, so stay tuned. I don't know.
Have you decided who you support personally?
Yes, but I'm not announcing that here. You
Okay.
could probably guess though.
Okay. Oh, well, there we go. Okay. Um, Councilmember Crawford, thank you so much for joining Dream City Podcast. Um, really appreciate you coming
Thanks
on
for
and
having
talking
me,
about
Janae.
yourself. And before
This
we
was
go,
fun.
let me tell
Thank
you
you.
one more time about our launch sponsor, Spotlight DC, the Capital City Fund for Investigative Journalism. The nonprofit raises funds and awards grants for award-winning, high-impact accountability journalism. Go to spotlightdc.org to donate and view their journalism projects. I'll see you in the Wilson building very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, see you around. Thanks again.